What if the best science lesson you ever had happened on a street corner with no desks, no worksheets, and a stranger rolling a ball at your feet? My guest today, David Price, is a LAMDA-trained science communicator and the manager of Science Made Simple North. And he has taken science busking, a street performance approach to STEM engagement, to audiences across 26 countries. During part one of our conversation, we actually get to experience a science busk in action. And I promise your arms are going to be involved. So if you're driving, you may need to pull over first. Here is part one of my conversation with David Price. This is Schoolutions, the podcast that extends education beyond the classroom. A show that isn't just theory, but practical, try it tomorrow approaches for educators and caregivers to ensure every student finds their spark and receives the support they need to thrive. I am Olivia Wall, and I am so excited to introduce you to David Price on the podcast today. Let me tell you a little bit about David. David Price is a London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts, or LAMDA, trained science communicator. He is the manager of Science Made Simple North, which specializes in science busking. It's a street performance approach to STEM engagement, which he has taken to audiences across 26 countries. Our conversation today will focus on David's work training researchers, schools, and science centers in the art of captivating, hands-on science communication. David, welcome from Hong Kong. We are 12 hours exactly apart, 7:30 my time in the morning, 7:30 p.m. your time. Thank you for doing this.
My absolute pleasure to be here, Olivia.
I am so excited. I have followed your work and I just think you are a fascinating human. And so I reached out. I wanted you to be on the podcast because I really want to make sure we are doing right by our students, their families, educators, everyone we can to build confidence when it comes to science education. So let's start the conversation. Who is a researcher or a piece of research you lean on with your work when it comes to science busking?
A researcher who I've been talking to, or who I've been using quite a lot recently, is a lady called Stefia Sini. And she is this incredible person who describes herself as an interplanetary engineer. How about that? An
Wow.
interplanetary engineer. I didn't know such things existed. I think Stefia might be the first.
Yes.
And she works in planetary defense. Literally, so the NASA project, some people might have remember it from a few years back, Dirt Impactor, where we crashed a satellite into a moon around an asteroid. Essentially, Stefania is the lead coder for that project and other projects like it.
Wow. That's
So
fascinating.
I've been in Hong Kong last week. It was the opening week of something called the Crouch Science Festival, and we do a schools tour in the first week of that. And Stefania was one of the people in the show that we brought along for the pupils.
Brilliant. Oh, this is so exciting. I'll tuck links to everything you're sharing in the show notes as well, so people will have access. Let's start off because you began this work in 1998. And there's this precipice where you're researcher or street performer, and you really had to decide, why did you choose to go the route of communications instead of researcher?
I was going to become a teacher. In actual fact, I was going to become a teacher. And I had a 6-week period where I had no money and no job. So I had to get a job of some description, anything. And I went into the employment office, which we sort of had then. And there was a note on the wall, written on the wall, a little card on the wall. Exhibit maker, part-time exhibit maker required for the Museum of Science and Industry. And I didn't go for 6 weeks. I stayed for 10 years.
Amazing. Ah, that's
um, and,
amazing.
and 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 moved from building exhibits really to, if you like, building performances and shows.
So let's get right into it. What is science busking?
Ooh, you ask a question that I am a veteran of failed funding bids where we have found a way not to answer that question. Um, if I can show you, maybe if I can show you, it'll give you, and then I can talk a little bit about it. So here is a busk that I learned off an amazing science communicator called James Piercy. So what we've got to do this. Everybody can, and if you can see me, fantastic. If you can hear me, no worries. A commentary will come along with this. So I
Okay.
want you to give yourself a little bit of space and put one hand in front of you, one index finger out in front of you. I'm sorry that is not being rude, and one index finger out behind you.
Okay.
And we have 3 attempts to bring that back finger forwards and hit the top of our front finger.
Oh boy. Okay.
Okay, do it in time with me. Maybe do it in time with me. So
All
bringing
right.
back finger over, and it hits tip of front finger. Way, 1.
We have to do it
And
3
again,
times. Okay.
bringing back finger over, and it hits tip of front finger again. Whoa, 2 out of 2.
I've gotten 2.
And one
All
last
right.
one.
Here we
Back finger coming
go.
over, and here it comes. Bang.
Yay. I did it.
Give your arms a bit of a shake.
Shake, shake, shake.
No, that's fantastic. Okay.
Okay.
But now we're going to do the same thing with our eyes closed.
Oh gosh.
Eyes
Okay.
closed. So exactly the same deal. You can do it with me. I'll do the commentary again, but we do
Okay.
it with our eyes tight shut.
Same
Here we
arm,
go.
same. Okay, here we go. Oh boy.
And 1. And I missed. Total miss from me.
I did it.
Well done.
Oh,
2.
I did it
Oh,
again.
closer. I usually manage to get at least 1. Here we go with another one. Oh, I missed all 3.
I got all 3. I got all 3.
That's fantastic. Now you can do that because of a piece of science called, it's got a fantastic name. I always struggle to spell it. It's called proprioception, body science called proprioception. And our brains and our nerves and our muscles can work out roughly the relation of one piece of our body in relation to another part of our body. And I can prove that to you. So eyes closed again, finger up in front of you, just one finger up in front of your face, about level with your nose.
Okay.
And on 1, 2, 3, you're going to move that finger around, up and down, backwards and forwards, round and round in a circle, any which way you want to. Be careful you don't hit anybody near you.
Right. I hit my nose. Okay.
1, 2, 3, go. Circle, anti-clockwise, clockwise, do the diagonals. Everybody forgets the diagonals. In, out, up and down, round and round and round and round. And put your finger on your nose.
Oh boy, that was hard.
And you open,
Okay.
and we've got our fingers on our nose. And we have our fingers on our nose because of a branch of science called proprioception. So it works.
It does. It does. Wow.
And that is what busking is. That one is fantastic. It doesn't use any materials other than the human body. But it's that joyful playing with phenomena, using the skills of street performers to help people relax and not worry too much about the facts and just enjoy the moment of STEM, that positive cultural footprint of STEM capital, science capital. More and more people are calling it these days. And I think, I think busking isn't the only game in town. It isn't the only technique to hold and attract and inspire audiences. But particularly for transient audiences, particularly for people who you have never met, who do not know you are going to be there talking about science. And using those skills of street performers, it becomes a really, really useful skill set. Yeah.
That was a fantastic example. And, if people are listening in the car, obviously they'd have to pull over to join in,
Don't
right?
let go of your steering
Don't
wheel
do that while you're
first.
driving. but it was beautifully narrated as well. And I did pretty well. I've had a nice amount of coffee so far this morning. So here's the coolest thing though, because you and Science Made Simple, you're winning award after award after award. I want to make sure I'm saying this right, but you've won the Josh Award for Outstanding Innovation in Science Communication for developing and popularizing these techniques, which is amazing. I also would say, I feel like busking is really peer led learning as well. And that's what I love about it, because I can see this so beautifully being very engaging in schools, in the classrooms. So, when you are not in town squares busking, what does this look like within a school setting?
Within a school setting, very often, so I was busking in a school once. To tell you a little story, a wonderful, amazing school in Durham, in the northeast of England, called Rael Gate School. And I was working at one of their festivals as a street performer. And they came to me and they said, David, we love all of that, but when you go, all of that freedom and that play and that self-expression through STEM and around STEM, it leaves with you. Can you train our pupils how to do this? And that really made me think. And they set me a goal, which was an absolute joy. And we created a training program to help pupils run with little bits of science. And Framogate was so successful at it that eventually the teachers who ran the program got in a little bit of trouble because they were taking pupils out of lessons so much. And they won a whole bunch of awards in their local area for busking at fetes and festivals, and became these incredible ambassadors for the school. But what really pleases me most about it went beyond that. So eventually the pupils came, we trained to a set series of busks, really, that we know are really accessible, made out of really accessible materials that people can pick up quickly and run with the ideas. But they came back to the teachers and said, yeah, but can't we do this? Can't we try that? Can't we do this? They were getting a little bit salty, they were pushing the boundaries of what they were
I
doing.
like that. Yeah.
And I love that.
Me too.
Absolutely adored that. Yeah.
It's brilliant. And so let's talk materials then, because we just used our own bodies to have that relationship between the movement, the hands on, and the actual science. What else do you usually have with you as you're setting up in the middle of a town square?
You wouldn't believe because I've been rehearsing today. All of the stuff that I would usually bring that I could have shown you, little bits and pieces, is in the theatre where I'll be working.
Of course,
Where
of
I'll be
course.
working on Wednesday, so I can describe to you anyway. But it's things like cardboard tubes, balloons. We tend to use balloons a lot, although there are some places in the world that really struggle to get balloon. We struggle to find balloons, string, things that you could go into your local 7-Eleven or maybe your local hardware store. If you make your kit, that's not to say we only use everyday materials, but we like to have versions of pretty much everything we have that use everyday materials, because then you're maximizing the chances of people being able to do it themselves, to watch
Yes.
that you live or online or whatever, and actually have a go safely themselves. Yeah.
That makes so much sense. And therein lies the ripple effect, the beautiful ripple effect. And so you may create this beautiful performance and you're standing in this court. What do you do? Like, take us into the moment with you. How do you captivate people's attention right out of the gate? Because that's so daunting to me to think about this, doing this.
And it is. When we train, we train pupils, we train teachers, we train researchers in these techniques, and it is frankly terrifying.
Yeah.
I agree. When I think about it, it still says, "Wow, do we actually do this?" But I think when you look at the skill set of street performers, it's actually like baby steps. The things that they do, everybody does. It's just that they're very, very good at them. The eye contact, the body language, the vocal modulation, all of these things, they're just but so that okay, they've done it, they've done this they've done these particular routines for 20 years. But if you break down what they do, it's actually really simple and it's really can do. And we can go into it and cherry pick the things that help who we are. So, for example, if I'm starting off, if I give you very often, my start off on a routine is I either have a basketball or a tennis ball, and I just roll it at people. That's it. I just roll it a bit. And you have to be made of stone not to react to that object in some way. Even
Yes.
if you avoid it, you're
Yeah.
still reacting to that object. And so often that's the part, and then, but more and off, so again, people will pick that ball up and either throw it back to you, kick it back to you, or carry it back to you. And already you've captured an audience, because until you let them give you that ball back, they're not going to go anywhere.
That is so interesting. And the ball, it's almost building that rapport and relationship right out of the
Already
gate.
you have that rapport, that thing
Yes.
between you, and then you have a little story about that ball and why we were using it, and that leads to something else. And this is what street performers are so amazing at doing, is they from really small beginnings like that, they build these enormous stories and attract sometimes thousands of passers-by to put money in a hat, with no contract. Yeah, they are incredible people, and their skills are really accessible.
So let's go a little bit deeper, because I know you attended the 2009 World Street Performance Championship in Dublin. What did you take after attending that you use all the time in your busking?
I think, wow, where to start? Well, I mean, there was one guy there who he was is a balance act. Incredible balance. I think he came third, or Australian gentleman, and I took a picture as he was starting his act with pretty much only a few people standing around him, and then I took a picture. I took an image 8 minutes later, as much as I could, standing in exactly the same spot, and he'd attracted something like, I don't know, it was over 2,000 people anyway.
It's amazing.
And these people can do that. Just absolutely blew me away. And I'm not the only person who's looked at their skill sets. There are other science communicators, probably lots of science communicators, who've actually looked at that skill set and thought, wow, we could actually, and the ball routine that I use, I've quite literally, I saw a few people using that at the World Championships, and that led me to start using it. But thinking, I mean, they were leading it down the route of magic or juggling, particularly juggling, and not that there isn't a whole bunch of science within juggling and magic and whatever else they do. But here's an interesting thing. One of the things that street performers say to me, and I bump into street performers all the time, and I know quite a few of them quite well. They say, "We love your act, David, but why do you explain things?" We don't understand why you have this need to explain things. This whole conversation about what science communication is comes out.
Yes. Well, and it's so interesting, because that's the juxtaposition between magic, keeping the science secret from your audience, versus the science communication and giving the why. Children, adults alike love to know the why behind what's happening, is why it's happening. So then here's the thing. I'm sure, performances, they have a tendency to go one way or go another, and you really have to flow with it. So, have you ever been in a situation where someone is really not into it, or an experiment goes not well, and you are kind of stuck?
What street performers are looking for, the really good ones, when you get in when you get in a street set, is, of course, they'll have lots of volunteers in the shows, but they're looking for that special volunteer, that often described as that golden volunteer, that volunteer who answers back, who's a little bit cheeky, who maybe doesn't do things exactly the way that you would want, because they know that that is massively attractive to transient audiences, and transient audiences will stop, hugely because of that interaction between you and that slightly cheeky volunteer. So, and street performers have a region. Lots of them will give themselves 3 attempts to find that golden volunteer. And if a volunteer comes up and they're not quite what they're looking for, then they'll still give that volunteer a great experience and have a good talk with them. But then relatively quickly, within a couple of minutes, they'll probably do something and then they'll go back and they'll pick somebody else. And what they're doing is searching for that golden volunteer.
So we're going to end part one with a lightning round, and I am so excited to just hear your gut responses to these questions. Do you find more joy in science busking or the festival stage?
I love them both dearly and spend a lot of time in both. But the thing is with the festival stage is you already have a secured audience. Convention says that when you sit down in a seat in such a show, you probably don't move. Whereas in the busking side of things, you have to win, you have to own, you have, that audience. And when that works, and I'm not saying it works every time for me, but when that works, it is such a satisfying thing. It's hard to put it into words. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What's a topic every science communicator should stop trying to make exciting?
Well, now I'm going to be cheeky here and answer this question
I figured you may.
in a different way. Very often, you're doing something in a street scenario, and somebody sees you doing it, and then you end up in this linear line of doing the same experiment again and again and again, because as the public approach you, all they're seeing you doing is that experiment. So that's the thing they want to do. And sometimes, particularly with researchers at festivals, it can get a little bit boring to have the same explanation. So one thing we try to say to any busker, to any performer, is just give yourself a few different ways of talking about the phenomena you're using that day. Because what it does, it keeps it fresh for you. And if it keeps it fresh for you, it keeps it fresh for your audience as well.
That is phenomenal, because I live the same thing when I am presenting or coaching around a topic. If I know I have people in the audience that have sat in a session before, I always make sure to have a few different ways of addressing a topic. And I never related that. That works for everything, but it really pushes you as well as a presenter. That's so interesting.
It really does.
Yeah, it does. Who is a scientist that you would love to teach to be a street performer?
Wow. It's the lady I already mentioned, in actual fact. So Stefania, because she's all over social media, particularly LinkedIn, which is something I tend to look at quite a lot. And I just think she'd make a great street performer. She'd absolutely wow audiences with her enthusiasm for what she does, for trying to save planet Earth, really, which is a great showstopper.
It is a good showstopper. If you could busk anywhere in the world, which street corner would you love to land on?
Somewhere in a major city in India.
Why?
Because I've worked in India a few times. I'd love to work there more. And the street settings, are so colourful and so full of curiosity. So maybe there's a barber and he's working outdoors because it's so warm, and he's shaving somebody with a cutthroat razor, and there are 20 people good-naturedly watching what's going on. And for a street performer, that's like heaven. And I've been able to experiment on that theme only for short periods of time, and it really had in science festivals, what I've been working for in India, and it does work like that. And I just think if busking, if science communication, street performance science busking is going to work anywhere, then I think India is a really good place for it. We'd have a really good chance of success. Yeah.
Oh, David, this has been absolutely fascinating. And I cannot wait for part 2 of our conversation. We're going to be really talking about the global implications that your work has. I'm also excited in part 2 to circle back. I mean, you are a jet setter, and it must be a fascinating life and yet exhausting. So I'm excited for you to share a little bit about that with us too. Thank you for this part 1 conversation, David.
My very great pleasure.
That wraps part 1 of my conversation with the remarkable David Price. We laughed, we moved our arms around on camera, and we talked about golden volunteers, cheeky students, and why the best science communicators are just really honest humans who love a good phenomenon. Make sure to head to the show notes for links to Science Made Simple, the British Interactive Group, and the Singapore National Science Busking Championships. If you're a funder, a school leader, or someone sitting on resources looking for work that genuinely matters, David's team is doing it. Share this episode, tag a science teacher, and if you have a child nearby, try the busking exercise from today's episode, and then ask them why it worked. Come back for part 2, where we are going global. Language barriers, busking kits built around what's actually available in Ghana, the heartbreak and hope around a wordless theater show called Visualize, and what David still dreams of building. You do not want to miss it. See you Friday.